Hello there, hello there, hello there, YouTubes. How the devil are? Well, I'm very well, thank you for asking. And welcome to the second official main episode ever, monthly episode of Let Them Eat Cake, the show where I and the absolutely adorably fantastic Mike Stutchbury talk about how the far right are a bunch of twats. How are you, Mike?
Oh, I've been better, but I'm sure we'll get through quite a bit of the subject matter that is vexatious and irritating me. But yeah, we'll be getting
Well,
to that.
yes. Well, indeed, yes. And on that note, I know you've been following, as indeed I have, the horrific events of Chemnitz in Germany over the last few days.
That is correct. Yes. So essentially, if you have not heard of what's been going on recently, I think it was like the last weekend. I've
Yeah.
lost track. I've been trying reading so many streams about it. Um, a a young man who was of German and Cuban descent was stabbed to death in an altercation that may or may not have involved um, a woman, and that
Well, officially, the police have ruled out any possibility of there being a sexual assault taking
yeah,
place,
yes,
which
yes. Well,
was one the way in which the far right always try and justify these things is, oh, the Muslims are raping everyone, but the
that's
police has
right.
that's a
Yeah,
load of bull. Yeah.
that emerged fairly late in the piece that there was actually no evidence of sexual molestation, but basically the arrest warrant for the perpetrators, whoever was involved, was leaked by a Bremen. I think it was someone in Bremen, in the Bremen government, um, leaked it, which is strange because you know it's a bit far from Chemnitz anyway. But it was leaked out, and it caused a number of far right groups and far right football ultras to descend upon the city of Chemnitz for a number of demonstrations, one big demonstration, and it basically devolved into groups of football ultras hunting down and trying to kick the shit out of anybody who didn't look sufficiently German, which is, yeah, which
Yeah, I'm
is
going to put a couple.
it's probably one of the bigger outbreaks of far right violence in Germany for at least the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm going to put up as we talk about the topic now. I've blocked on my screen. We're going to show a couple of the images of Nazi salutes and whatnot. Yeah, yeah, the Chemnitz thing. It's worrying for a number of reasons. A, like you say, there are far right lunatics running around beating up anyone who's sort of vaguely brown, which is horrific in of itself. But also, there's a wider problem here that, like you say, it was leaked by presumably either it would have to be either a police or judicial source
Mm.
who has
They've
contact.
they've traced the source to this. I think it's a prosecutor in Bremen. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check that up, and I can get back to you on that one. But it would suggest that there's been a rather circuitous route through all sorts of channels to get to the point where it's got there. So you
Yeah,
know,
well,
yeah,
clearly they have contact with the far right and
mm,
are on some friendly terms. So there's an element of the German state that is
mm,
in cahoots with these far right bastards.
mm.
And of course, our old friend, the gloriously named, Germanically named Lutz Bachmann.
Yes,
Um,
head of Pegida, or
yes,
one time head of Pegida.
yeah, he's who's got, like I say, a gloriously Germanic name, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, a rather inglorious
Mm.
personality and track record.
Mm.
Yeah, he's one of the ones who sort of gave this the big up and got the
Mm.
far right involved in all of this bollocks. I
Mm.
wonder why the people of the government of Britain didn't want fucking terrorist garbage like him coming into the country. The mind boggles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you like you say, they've been running around the city of Chemnitz, and they've called for protests to happen today. I'm not entirely sure quite what became of those, and on Saturday
Mm.
as well. So we'll have to wait and see for developments on that. But yeah, they're now these fuckers. Look, I mean, people doing Nazi salutes in the streets of Germany in front of.
Mm.
I think was it you that pointed this out on Twitter? I thought it was a rather good point. In front of a statue of Karl Marx, which
Mm.
in three languages reads "Workers of all countries unite."
Yeah.
Where you've got these
Well,
poor people,
I
and
think
they
that.
are largely poor people, screaming about other poor people in
Well, I
front
think
of that very statue.
yeah.
It's bizarre.
I think the probably more concerning than that. I mean, there's a dark irony in the fact that they were standing in front of a statue of Karl Marx, but the police were completely overwhelmed, and they couldn't do a damn thing. And any German will tell you that giving this Hitler salute in public is instantly a couple of €100 fine, and maybe potentially a spell in prison for a couple of months.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's
So,
very.
I mean, the fact that there are multiple fascists on the streets of Chemnitz giving Hitler salutes in front of riot police who can do, sweet fuck all, is very, very concerning. And it's really sort of speaking to the fact that the far right in the East, which has got a pretty long history since the fall of the Berlin Wall, is really being energized and fueled by this recent explosion in populism and all the usual suspects that we talk about. The advent of social media and talking heads have really come together to bring more people into these groups than there have ever been before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The police clearly underestimated the size and scope of these, and they're not protests. It was essentially a fucking riot.
The thing about this,
it is illegal to give the Nazi salute in public, and the German police at the moment, and it could rise given more protests, but there are 11 investigations ongoing.
But I'm telling you that there are many more.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For understandable reasons, they have to have sufficient evidence rather than
the other thing that I find really strange about this, the fact that the police were overwhelmed, is that if you know anything about the far right in Germany, it's that the far right in Germany is absolutely riddled with police informants. So I think there have been multiple cases that have been quashed or prosecutions that have been stopped because the person responsible is a police informer and they don't want to prosecute. Essentially, they don't want to send that person to prison. So, it's kind of funny that the authorities just had no idea that this was going to happen, considering the fact that there are so many police informants within the ranks of the far right. But I guess that goes both ways too. I mean, at some point, the lines start to blur between the police that liaise with these informants and the informants themselves. And if you know anything about East Germany and the many factors that have conspired to make it a hotbed of right wing belief, then you wouldn't be surprised that local cops and local far right groups are starting to almost come together in some ways.
Yeah, you wouldn't be massively surprised if there's an element of one or two of those undercovers going, they call it going native, I believe is the phrase they use in sociology, whereby they essentially become the thing they're trying to study or inform upon. That wouldn't be surprising. But yeah, as you say, the East, what was East Germany now is just the eastern part of the reunited Germany, is very much still poverty-stricken, which is, as we know, is just a consistent breeding.
There is the wage disparity between East and West is incredibly stark. And the other thing that you need to realize about the East of Germany is that after the fall of the wall, it emptied basically. I mean, obviously there are large population centers in the East, but the flood of migration to West Germany was inspiring in many ways. I mean,
you had an absolutely monumental brain drain. There's no doubt about it.
Brain drain, money being taken out of it. All sorts of businesses moving, upping sticks and moving. I mean, there were businesses in East Germany, and there were employers, and they were also moving over to the West. And so in every single sense of the word, the East was being drained into the West, and those who were left behind were those who essentially didn't have the skills or didn't have the ability to sort of rise up from where they were and make good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Low information voters, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, there's always an element where you want to tread lightly into that kind of territory, because it's wrong to condescend to people, but unfortunately,
absolutely.
Unfortunately, it is a truth amongst a lot of people in those situations, and it's not because they're inherently stupid. The opportunities they've had in their lives are abysmal. And the people of Eastern Germany have no doubt been sold a bad deal by reunification. They've nothing like their lives may have improved slightly, but they've not improved in anywhere near the level those of the rest of Germany have.
No, they're still. It will possibly take another 50 years before there's any kind of real parity between the two. And the thing, I was talking about this on Twitter the other day. The other thing is that you have people who, in the East, when East Germany was formed in 49 and they had to sort of come up with this new national narrative, they went with the fact that, oh, everybody in East Germany was an anti-fascist who was fighting the Nazis. There was no real soul searching on the way that there is in the West. If you grew up in the West of Germany, you were reminded at every opportunity that your grandparents were possibly party members or had been involved in some way, whereas in East Germany, there wasn't that sort of national soul searching.
Yeah, and there was actually it probably went, or not probably did, it went a stage further than that, of course, because the Soviet idea was that fascism was the end of capitalism, and so by that anti-fascist group, which, like you say, was a completely fictional fucking national narrative they had, they were very much the vanguard of the end of capitalism. They were the best communists, and
that's right.
Bollocks. It's just total nonsense.
And for many older Germans who did live in the West, okay, shit cars, shit basically everything, compared to the West, but it was there. And it was, there was a fairly regular supply of all the things that you needed to stay alive. And some, like lots of people, have a very fond memories of the East and the way that life was. And
well, there's a very good reason why, say, Stalin is very well thought of in Russia, because he made Russia an incredibly powerful nation and made those people feel important, regardless of the fact that he millions of people murdered and all the rest of it. He's still remembered as one of their sort of favourite historical figures, which to us seems mad, but there you go.
Yeah. And I mean, the in the East, there hasn't been any of that kind of well, one of the things that really strikes me about the East is that they didn't look at the Nazi past, but nor did they have any sort of critical look at the Soviet regime either. There's no real examination of the the end game of populism and the beginnings of totalitarianism. It's just not a
so I mean, given
not something that they were raised with.
Yeah, and given that cocktail of factors, it shouldn't be surprising that far right garbage like the quote unquote alternative for Deutschland do rather well electorally in areas in the East.
Oh, it's probably the area in which they do the best, and I mean that's the end. The East is these areas in the East, and I've got to be really clear because I'm sure we've got one or two people listening from Germany. It's not it's not all of the East. It's rural areas like Saxony, like parts of Saxony that are rural. And we're not talking about cities like Leipzig or Dresden. In a lot of sense, it is these smaller towns where it sort of really festers this far right sentiment.
Yeah, I think there's undoubtedly there's something about if you live in a larger city and you mix amongst different types of people, there's no doubt it rubs off on you well. You end up you can't hate people you live around and know aren't crazy. Whereas these small towns, like you said, I think fester is the good word for it. These ideas do fester with people, and if you're stuck in not just a small town but a dead end small town.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the there's a classic example of the prosecutions this year. I'm trying to think of the name of the town, and I can't think of the name of the town, where there was a group that was arrested for bombing asylum shelters, or planning. Sorry, not bombing, planning to bomb an asylum shelter.
Okay. Well, there was one that was a deliberate arson, wasn't there?
There was a deliberate arson. What's the name of it? I can't think of the name of it. It's actually in my head. But there are these.
It's a German town. It's a German town, so it's going to sound silly. Whatever it is, it's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Saga.
Yeah. So Right. So, look, I will probably come back to the comments and put it in there. But it is these small towns in which either the neo-Nazis emerge, or the other group that gets quite a bit of traction, and the security services in Germany are worried about is the Reichsbürger, who are groups that believe that the Federal Republic of Germany, or the Bundesrepublik, is not legitimate. And there are all sorts of flavors of Reichsbürger, or Reich citizen, or imperial citizen. There are those who believe that the Imperial Germany before Weimar was the only legitimate Germany, and there's people that believe that even Imperial Germany in some respects wasn't legitimate, and
is this a German version of the stupid sovereign citizen?
Yeah, but because it's German, it makes a little bit more sense. Yeah. I mean, I've always thought that the sovereign citizens are uniquely crazy in the way they talk about, if a flag doesn't have a certain trim, then it doesn't mean something. And if your name doesn't have a capital letter in the middle, capital initial, it also means something else. But the Reichsbürgers seem to be a little bit more organized and seem to be a little bit more lucid in what they say. And they will put forward a case that would still be laughed out of court, and has been laughed out of many courts, but at least has some sort of cogent thinking to them. And these groups, alongside the far right, look, they're often, members are often part of the same groups, have been found to be stockpiling weapons and planning bombings and doing all sorts of stuff to sort of, attack the German state that they believe is encroaching on them. So,
yes,
yeah.
and
it's pretty gross, dude.
It is. And on that note, it's something I'm going to do regularly for each monthly episode of this. And if someone wants to come up with a snazzy name for the segment, by all means. But basically, I'm going to list out a few of the far-right bastards who have been arrested and imprisoned as a way of telling you, these fuckers are dangerous. I'm not trying to scare people, I'm just trying to tell people. We had Richard Preston, Imperial Wizard of the KKK in America, jailed for 8 years for his part. He shot at a black man at the Charlottesville gathering, the original Unite the Right gathering last year, and he got 8 years this month, which is it's better than nothing, because I didn't think anything would come of it, because a white supremacist in a white supremacist state isn't necessarily going to be punished. But 8 years for them, which is something. A couple from Britain, actually. We had Peter Morgan, a Scottish Nazi, who was found with all kinds of extremist literature and bomb-making equipment, which is rather worrying. He received 12 years. 12 years in jail. Yeah, which is pretty good, actually. That's a lot more than they usually fucking get. The members of the Nordic Resistance were planning the murder of a journalist. They've been arrested. They haven't been convicted yet, but they've been arrested for that.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, the Nordic Resistance are from. They're were they? I'm just trying to think. Are they the ones in Sweden? Are you talking about the Swedish ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. So they are a Swedish group.
Yes, I believe so.
Yep.
Yeah. And there was a Welsh neo-Nazi, Austin Ross, who got 6 years. He was very strange. A massive fan, unsurprisingly, of Tommy Robinson. He got 6 years for arson and vandalism. He had a particular penchant for going around writing "Hitler was right" across walls in his town, and he wasn't a particularly big town. It wasn't very difficult to find him.
I think he had trouble with swastikas as well, if I believe.
Yes.
If I'm right, they were not right. They were
no, they were not well drawn on every occasion. I think he mastered it by the end, but by which time the police were onto him, and he's going to spend the next 6 years in. Well, he'll probably spend 4 years, but he's been sentenced to 6 years in jail, and frankly, may he rot. Anyways, I'll put together a little list like that each week. And I'll probably put together some images of them as well, maybe, for future episodes. And if someone wants to come up with this, like I say, a good title for that, because I relied on you for the title of this fucking whole show, so the audience would help.
Yeah.
Because I'm not very original. Anyway, I'll kick off myself, and then we can, So, where do we want to go next? Shall we go with InfoWars and the continuing madness of InfoWars?
I mean, it is a bit of a thread over the last couple of months, and it seems to be their major push for the year that tech companies are trying to kneel on them and squeeze the life out of the internet, and particularly shut them down as a vehicle for their ideas. But yeah, so let's go with them.
Yes, indeed. We did between the first episode of this and series and this episode, we did a special on the bannings of Infowars. We won't go too far into that, but just suffice it to say, they were banned by YouTube and Spotify and iTunes to an extent. There's some issue there, but whatever. But what then happened was that Alex Jones and Paul Joseph Watson and the usual crowd of fucking hacks, which is ironic on this occasion, claimed that the Infowars website had been hacked by some outside group, which was interesting given that the only elements of their website that remained unaffected by that supposed outside hacking were the supplements segment of their website, where you can buy their incredibly expensive and frankly rather fucking pointless tablets, and their donate button.
Funny. Absolutely funny.
Yeah, ridiculous. As if an outside group who wanted to hack and disrupt the money-making schemes of Infowars would still keep up their two money-making elements of their website. Load of bollocks. They hacked themselves in order to make it appear like they've been hacked. So ironically, given that they used to claim that everything was a false flag, they false flagged themselves.
I'm going to say I'd venture that it's easier to shut down an e-commerce site than it would be just to shut down the main site. Like I think there's many more ways that you can mess with that. So it is fairly flagrant and open that this was something to rile up the base, so to speak.
Yeah, it was total bollocks, total and utter bollocks. And not just that, but they were claiming that it was this group and that group and the other group before they'd done any investigation, which tells me they already knew who'd done it, and it was themselves. Yeah,
the intern.
Ridiculous.
Yes. What else? What else have we got in terms of info?
Oh well, sorry. I was going to allow you to talk, but if you're finished, that's fine. We've got Alex Jones, who's famous for his, let's say, incorrect ideas about the LGBT community, including LGBT supposedly in amphibians as well, famously. Apparently they were putting chemicals in the water that turned frogs gay. Brilliant. Wrong, but brilliant. And he's a transphobic piece of garbage as well, which is interesting because on a recent show, he was showing via an overhead camera an iPad screen where he was scrolling through an article on Infowars.com, his own website. And when he clicked off that, it went to a general page on his iPhone screen, which was his sort of 8 most visited websites thing.
Your speed dial, basically.
Yeah. And you would expect there to be sort of news websites, maybe something a bit more like music or art or something like that, maybe a sports team that he supports. One of those was a video of transgender pornography, which included a woman giving what I believe is technically described as a rusty trombone to a trans man.
I did not know that. I did not know that there was a rusty trombone involved.
I believe so. Yes. I mean, I'm not an expert.
Not a real rusty trombone. Just for the benefit of yes.
For the benefit of the viewer. Essentially, it's when you give analingus whilst also jerking the penis.
Okay. I wasn't quite clear on my terminology there, but
yes, that's what that act entails, and that was what that video contained. And brilliantly, he didn't just come out and say, "Yeah, okay, I'm into trans stuff. I'll stop being a transphobic piece of shit now. I've accepted who I am," which is what an adult would do. He said, and I quote, "It was research."
Why do I have the image of that old English man who rang up all the, I think it was the sex lines or something like that, and then got the bill, and there's the picture of him with his wife.
Yeah, it was research.
Do you know the one I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
It's on par with that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, apparently, it seems he rather vigorously researched it in the toilets at work every afternoon. You know, and he needed all those toilet tissues because he was crying because it was
I
so
mean,
dejected.
have we confirmed that it was like one of those pages that show your most visited, or was it just a tab that it was open? Because I think it would.
Well, either way, he's definitely admitted to having watched it, even if it's only for research, which it definitely wasn't.
What you gonna learn from it?
Yeah, I don't know what. Also, if that was research, Alex, what fucking story were you researching there? What news story involves that? Jesus Christ, what a load of bollocks. Just admit it. Like you're a trans porn person.
No shame, John. No shame, Alex.
That's the thing. If it was just a normal person watching trans porn, fine. But it's because he's a transphobic piece of garbage. You just think, just accept who you are. That's fine.
The world don't move to the beat of just one drum.
Exactly. It takes different strokes
to rule the world.
Which is ironic, given the act involved, really.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah.
Anyways, enough of poking a bit of fun at Alex Jones for being an incredibly insecure piece of shite. We'll keep you up to date with any more nonsense involving InfoWars, which there undoubtedly will be, because now they're not on YouTube and their main source of income, or certainly one of their main sources of exposure, has gone. They're going to need to try and remain relevant. So I don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll set his dick on fire.
Obvious stunt incoming in 5, 4, 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know what he. Maybe that would be amazing if he decided to pretend to go trans and just accept his thing in order to try and become like, I don't know, some sort of weird.
Oh, I don't know how Paul would be with that. I think Paul's
Paul is like.
Paul's been veering into some scarily trad.
He has, but Paul
trad lifestyle shit lately.
Yeah, but Paul has, much like some of his other sort of borderline tradcon people, like what's his fucking name, Stephen Crowder.
Yeah.
They seem oddly comfortable dressing up as the opposite sex, do they not?
Yes. This is true.
For transphobes, they are oddly perfectly comfortable wearing a wig and a dress. And good on you guys. That's a wonderful thing. Accept who you are. It's fine. Oh, and plus, I'd definitely go and see Paul Joseph Watson do a drag act. Definitely, I would watch that. Anyways, enough. Back to far more serious matters. Yes. God. Donald Trump. Where to even begin with his scumbaggery? We'll gloss over, I think, his legal issues, because whilst they are pertinent to the far right and all the rest of it, I'm sure there's more to come, and we'll keep our powder dry on that one for more pressing updates. But what I did want to
and Byzantine they are. I don't think it's worth, by the time we'd finished discussing them, they'd be completely the situation would be completely changed. So yeah, probably.
Well, that's one of the reasons I stopped my series. I was originally doing a series, but I started. It was a weekly series, but I stopped because by the time I'd come up with a script on Thursday night for Friday to film it and do it, everything had changed. That 24 hours, it was so you couldn't do a script and then record it and then put it out and it'd still be relevant and fresh. So what's the fucking point? Anyway, right, Trump. We know he watches Fox News, and essentially Fox News panelists now have a huge amount of power beyond that which a mainstream journalist would have anyway. They're now essentially setting US government policy, as Tucker Carlson, erstwhile lovey of the far right, fucking new right, shite right, whatever you want to call them, put out a piece out about South Africa and land. What's the word I'm looking for? Land appropriation or expropriation.
Which we should add before we continue. The legislation that they're referring to, or that the South African government has been, working with in terms of appropriating land, has been around since 1996 with very few changes. And maybe we'll come back to the comments with something like that. So if anybody comes at you regarding that,
indeed,
anyway, continue.
Indeed, yes, indeed. It's been around a long time. It's been phenomenally.
So let's just say nothing new. There's nothing really new happening here. It's just
exactly. Apart from the fact
that a campaign promise or something that the ANC thought that they were going to,
exactly. And even, Julius Malema is not a member of the South African government, so you really don't. The fact that he's chanting evil things, it bad thing, but it's not something that the South African government can be held accountable for. It's
No,
ridiculous.
he's
Anyway,
a dickhead, but he's not a dickhead in power.
yes, exactly, absolutely.
Anyway, so yes, story
but
on Fox News.
Yeah, on Fox News, Tucker Carlson put out a thing about South Africa and the land appropriation stuff, and basically spouting the Lauren Southern-esque bullshit line about white genocide. To which Trump,
and at which point Lauren Southern
Lauren,
shorts, basically.
Lauren Southern, I think might have actually exploded with joy. Literally, I think she's now she's across northern Canada. Yeah, she was delighted because her utter fucking bullshit has now become essentially US state policy, where Trump, having watched that piece of shit on Tucker Carlson, has now asked the South African or the US embassy in South Africa to investigate and ask questions of the South African government about an entirely.
Can I just interject? Can I just interject because this is inside me and it needs to come out. Tucker Carlson has the biggest, most flagrant "have I just shit myself" expression.
Yes.
Constant "have I shit myself" expression that I have ever come across in my life. Any screen cap of Tucker Carlson, it looks like he's ready to put a hand down and test the waters, so to speak. do an oil check.
Well, all I'm saying is, if it's watery, you've got issues. A bit of fibre, fucking hell, wouldn't
I mean, I can't even think about anything else when I see Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, he's an absurd character. He's not a joke.
Have I shit myself face? Anyway, so
yeah, he's a far right propaganda.
This is the standard bearer. This is the messenger, the herald that is bringing the word to Donald Trump.
Yes, he's a far right shit salesman who looks like he's just shit himself. Yes, indeed. Yeah, and so Donald Trump has asked the US embassy in South Africa to investigate an entirely internal legal matter in South Africa, as if where's the outrage here? Supposedly he was against interventionism, and now he's already asked his ambassador, his religious ambassador, to interfere with an internal.
Hang on, when you said religious ambassador,
yeah,
is it the same one that tried to interfere with Tommy?
No, that's the one I'm mentioning. No, I was literally saying he's already asked his religious ambassador to interfere on a British legal matter, not an entirely internal British matter, not involving a US citizen, not involving anything to do with US interests, interfering with a British internal affair. And now he's asking them to do that in South Africa as well. I'm sorry, who the fuck does he think he is? This is an outrageous thing to be doing. And okay, the US
he thinks he's the king. He thinks he's,
He does, yeah. And I know the US has been all for the illegal countries, but I thought he wasn't one of the neocons. I thought he was non-intervention. Load of bollocks. And unfortunately now, like I say, the Lauren Southern white genocide myth is now US state policy, which is phenomenally worrying.
Yes, and there's precious little we can do about it.
well,
we can educate. We can educate, but there's
we can educate and just wait it out because Donald Trump's old and will be dead soon, and secondly, he'll have forgotten by next week. There's no way he remembers it now because it happened last week. So there's no way he remembers anything. If you asked him about it, he'd go, "What about South Africa? I've never heard of them," or something.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
well, I mean, possibly one of his 2 or 3 moves is to throw something else in front of a legal matter or a scandal that's coming his way. But he does that so much.
Yeah.
You can't possibly keep track of all those plates that he's got spinning, all those, the distractions. So yes, he will probably have forgotten about it next week, and there'll be some, policy officer from the embassy in Johannesburg in 6 months' time who will have written a report, basically saying that it's all bullshit, and be told that it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, who cares? The guy that asked you to write this report is in jail. Hopefully.
Yes, exactly.
Hopefully. Let's end that particular segment on that high note of hopefully the President of the United States of America will be indicted. Well, first he'll have to be impeached and then indicted and imprisoned because he's a fucking criminal. Anyway,
I'll be making the appropriate sacrifices and prayers in front of my altar tonight, so don't worry about that.
Well, indeed. Well, indeed. Papa George Soros be praised, absolutely. And having mentioned Lauren Southern, it would be remiss of us, having not mentioned it last month when most of it happened, Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux's tours down under. Yeah, they first went to your own great homeland, the land of.
Did we talk about that in great deal? I mean, obviously I've got the memory of a goldfish. That's why I'm asking you. But I believe we touched on the fact that she went to Lakemba, which is a Muslim neighborhood. Well, no, it's not a What am I talking about? It's not a Muslim neighborhood. It has a Lebanese community. Okay, who have been there for 30 odd years.
And this is the district of Sydney, I believe.
Yeah, Sydney. It's in Sydney's west. Okay, very multicultural, but there is a fairly considerable Lebanese community there, and of course, obviously to serve that Lebanese community, which includes Christians, but Maronite Christians, there is a mosque, and she went there and tried to claim that it was a no-go zone. And what she failed to sort of show, her and Callan and whoever else was there filming, was that if she turned the camera around 180 degrees, she would have shown a pub.
Yes.
I think in the area, and would have showed any number of takeaways from places from all over the world, and lots of bemused locals of every hue thinking, what the fuck is going on?
Exactly.
And she got what she wanted, though, because the police turned up and said, no, you can't film here. This is you possibly, about to breach the peace, so stop it. And she assumed that she was being, her free speech was being denied, which does not exist in Australian law, by the way. And was basically.
And even if it did, she's not an Australian citizen, so the Australian government wouldn't have to necessarily abide by that anyway.
After that, she got a good run on all the in all the papers that were owned by Rupert Murdoch. Yeah, so she was on a lot of things. She was on Sky News quite a bit, and
it was like you say, it could bring you back to the point you made at the top there about the pub that was literally behind her if they turned the camera. She claimed that Sharia law was in practice in this area.
No.
I don't know. I don't know that there are many pubs in Sharia zones. To be honest, I don't think that's in the same way that Heinz had made all of their products Sharia compliant when some of them contain pork sausages.
Not very halal, is it?
Not incredibly halal. No.
Yeah, incredibly haram. But yeah, so she milked it for all she was worth. One thing I'm very pleased to report is that she went to Melbourne and tried to make a video saying, pretending to be someone else, saying, "Would you beat up?" Well, I can't remember what it was. It was like, "What do you think of Lauren Southern?" or something like that. And then Melburnians were like,
no,
we don't know who you are.
Yeah, she was asking, should we kill Lauren Southern?
Yeah, and
and most of them went, well, who's that? I don't know who that is, and or no.
Yeah. Then there was after she made that video, I think she said something along no, I'm getting this out of order. Then she had her speech with Stefan Molyneux, and it was held way out of town. Yeah. We're talking about, it's the equivalent of driving to somewhere like Luton, well, where I am from London, to do a.
To be fair, in Australia, that's like one bus stop, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically. But anyway, it was out of out of town. Yeah. Even it was out of town even for Melbourne.
Geographically, that's a long way. Yeah,
and essentially. Well done to the Melbourne anti-fascist community, because they blocked the bus that was taking people from the train station to get there. So all these sad motherfuckers had to walk quite a long way to get to the venue. The speech went off without a hitch.
But it's okay because the Southern Australia is a really nice temperate climate to be walking in. It's fine.
No, miserable weather at the moment. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know if you, I don't know if you guys heard about the actual speech itself, but there was a laughable Antifa plant who apparently had tried to attack the stage and was yelling, "I love refugees, I love refugees," because that's something you yell when you're.
Oh, definitely. That was totally legit. That wasn't a plan at all. That was fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Then the day after, it turned out that most of the security that had been hired was actually from a group I think called the what's it called, the Lads Club, the Lads Society, something. It's a new essentially a white nationalist group. So the security was, you know, a bunch of 20 something absolute units, bucks, who had Lad Society, that's what it's called, who were, you know, fascists basically.
What a surprise.
Yeah,
Why do they keep
no
attracting?
fucking surprise. She had such a miserable time in Melbourne that she was later heard to have, or reported to have said, you know, I wanted to fucking nuke Melbourne, and to it, at which point, you know, Melbourne told her to fuck off in those uncertain words.
And as is unsurprising, the that kind of rhetoric, that kind of drama train, people hear about it ahead of time, and so when they then hopped across the Tasman Sea, whatever the fuck it's called, to the slightly less big but no less grand nation of New Zealand, home of the hobbits and the orcs and Smaug and all that bollocks. Yeah, they were essentially BTFO'd by the people who.
Well, that's the thing about. I don't want to make. I don't want to make a I don't want to make a generalization about the people of my homeland in New Zealand, but I will. I feel fairly confident as for going on the record as saying that they have a fairly low tolerance for bullshit. So, I mean, even though Lauren Southern got a media blitz in Australia, most people were like, you know, what the fuck is this? You know, get out of here. We haven't got time for that Nazi crap, because she's fairly obvious when it comes to the Nazi crap. So when she went to New Zealand, I mean, New Zealand was already at the point where, you know, nobody was willing to sort of interact with her.
Yeah, well, the mayor of the town, and was it Wellington or
Auckland, I think.
Auckland, yes. Apologies. I've got the two towns that exist in this. It was a 50-50 chance, and I got it wrong. Anyways, no, I'm joking. Yeah, the mayor of Auckland said that no government facility could be used by these people. Fair enough, absolutely fair enough. And they did find one venue, which was okay with going with it until they actually looked into who the fuck these people were. Found out, like you say, about the stuff about nuking Melbourne and all the rest of it, or Melbourne, as it should be called, because that's how it's pronounced by the locals. And all of a sudden, told them not just that they weren't allowed the venue, but if they didn't leave the property immediately, they would be called the police upon for trespassing.
You don't want to mess with the Kiwi police. Let me just say that. Having seen some of the big Maori brothers.
Yeah, they're look. Talk about units. Yes, they're
absolutely.
Where rugby union is.
I suggest that the New Zealanders have a fairly low threshold when it comes to Nazi fuckers. So,
yes, yeah. they are a very progressive people. It seems from the outside. I can't say. One of my favourite moments, actually, of parliamentary stuff ever was one fantastic speech given in the New Zealand Parliament about gay marriage, where he mocks brilliantly the religious nutters, such that they exist in New Zealand, who had written to him, you know, saying that he was going to burn in the fires of hell for eternity. To which he replied, "Well, I'm a physicist, so I worked out that if hell is 6,000 degrees, that it will take approximately 2.4 seconds for me to burn in the fire of hell, which is hardly eternity. I'll put up with it." Which is a fantastic response. Anyway,
got a lot of time for those for the Kiwis, particularly in this instance. And I think if you look, I will look for the video and I'll possibly post it on my Twitter. There was a great moment where I think it was Lauren and Stefan were either checking in or checking out at their hotel, and somebody realized who she was and basically told her that, no wonder you're going. We have no time for Nazis and white nationalists in Queensland. Get the fuck out of here. And Lauren was basically demanding his arrest, and that calling him everything under the sun. But he was just sort of sitting there waiting for his keys to get given to him so he could go up to his room. But
Yeah.
I think it demonstrated very clearly the attitude that most New Zealanders had towards the visit.
Yes, and talking of white nationalists who aren't particularly welcome, Unite the Right 2 happened in August as well, which was a lot of fun. Yeah, people remember the aforementioned Charlottesville thing a year ago where there was the terrorist attack that killed Heather Heyer. Yeah, and subsequently they wanted to have essentially an anniversary, a celebration of that, apparently. But they were banned from going back to Charlottesville, so they went to the relatively nearby Washington DC, the capital of the country, and about 20 people turned up.
Yeah, but
a lot of fun.
It was looking at it, it's kind of bizarre. I mean, on the one hand, the number of police and security that was basically called in to make sure that nothing happened to these guys is kind of intense. But yeah, as people said, as you said, there are around 20 people turned up,
which is fantastic. Yeah,
it's funny. I mean, nobody in Washington had wanted anything to do with them.
Yeah.
There were the subway. Can't remember what the Washington subway is called, but there were 3 cars set aside for protesters coming in on the subway, but the union basically said it's not happening.
Yeah,
they threatened to strike over it.
Fair play to them.
At every turn, Washington DC were basically saying we want nothing to do with you guys. So
yeah,
that was quite heartening in some ways.
Indeed, that was a wonderful fillip. I really enjoyed that because their strength is such that it was, I remember the streams of tiki torches and thinking, oh my god. But actually, I think it goes to the show for a certain extent that anti-fascism, Antifa tactics and campaigning really does pay off in the long run.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm of two minds about this because obviously you're not getting the white shirt, cargo pants, tiki torch brigade turning up who enjoy this kind of performative fascism, so to speak.
Yeah,
and obviously they're scared from turning up, and the grifters are sort of the your Cernoviches, your Mike Posobiec's, all these guys. They're scared away from it. But I kind of got to wonder, like how much support is there behind the online basically.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to wonder is, and I'm really interested to read pieces and to talk to people about the levels of support online. Yeah, I want to know whether the Unite the Right 2's piss poor turnout can be reflected in support online, or whether that sort of right wing, that sort of those far right alt-right beliefs are sort of being pushed in other directions.
Well, that's difficult, and I dare say it would be impossible to really get a full handle on, because by the time you did, the dynamics would have changed again.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't know whether it's cause for celebration. I mean, we can pause for a minute and cheer that Jason Kessler was almost on the brink of tears when he was speaking, because nobody.
And of course, brilliantly, I know I did a video on this. He was stopped from carrying the sticks that his flags were on by a massive black police officer.
But I think we can take joy in all of this because it's fun, it's symbolic.
I love the idea that I love the idea. Yeah, I love the idea of this little dumpy, fat white guy thinking he's genetically superior to this.
Why are they always nuggets? Why are these? Exactly. Why are these far right white nationalists? Why are these porky little nuggets? I mean, exactly. I'm a porky little nugget myself, but
Well, that's fine, and I would never advocate.
Where the master? You know, they all talk about the master race and the supremacy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. I would never have a go at people in general just for the way they look. But if you're going to claim to be a member of the master race and genetically superior, you'd better be fucking
Like that
honest.
classic panel from Preacher, where he's confronting the white supremacists. He's like, you, where the fuck is your chin?
Yeah, exactly.
They
And
all have these little soul
the black guy was about a foot taller and
ball sack beards,
great shape.
fash cuts and ball sack beards. They, like shaved gerbils.
Exactly. Well, my retort to them is always, if you're the best our species can produce, then we're fucked. If they're the best species that our species can do, then we might as well give up, frankly, because they're yes. The idea that they consider themselves genetically superior to, I don't know, Idris Elba or I don't know, any number of black athletes or whatever is just a fucking absurdity.
Well, while we're on the topic of Jason Kessler, though, everybody has to make sure they've seen the video where he's talking to. I don't know the name of the guy that he's talking to, but Jason Kessler was talking to somebody about the Unite the Right and the failure of everybody to turn up. And wasn't it that his father came in and told him to stop using the room for live streaming?
Yeah, his dad came in and
he's had to go home. He's had to go to live with his parents again, and he's basically being told off for doing his Nazi shit in his parents' house.
Which is fair enough, yeah. I mean, they must be so proud. He got 20 people to turn up. Fucking hell! You can get 100 people to turn up if you provide free chicken wings. For fuck's sake, you got 20.
Yeah, I got to wonder about this. This is another thing that I sort of think about. I mean, obviously, it is right and good to deplatform Nazis, and it's right, and one should never try to speak with Nazis and try to see their side of things, because they don't have, and like they've abrogated they've left their place at the table, so to speak, if they've gone and become a Nazi. But like, what do you do if you're like Jason Kessler and all you're known for is Unite the Right and being the guy that essentially helped kick off Charlottesville? Where do you go from that? How do we bring, not that it's our responsibility to bring people back from that, but
Well, my point has always been that anyone who wanted to do to essentially repent, as it were, not that I want to make this a religious thing at all, because he can keep his religion. I don't give a fuck about that. But it's the racist stuff that can be done. You can rehabilitate yourself, but you can't just vaguely change. It has to be a complete and utter reversal of who you are.
Okay, I agree with that. But yeah, I mean, I guess what I was saying was just brought about by seeing quite a few of these figures, and even sort of alt-light figures, like the case of our own Katie Hopkins. The only thing that some of these people seem to think that they can do to continue is double down.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing that I was worried about.
Well, it ends two ways: either disastrously with them being imprisoned or going fucking postal or something, or they have a complete reversal. They have a road to Damascus type moment. Again, not making this religious, but and say, well, actually, this isn't the way to go. And by doing that, and by becoming an anti-fascist campaigner, you can rehabilitate yourself. Look, people, I think with the extreme cases like Kessler, because obviously he's got the blood of Heather Heyer on his hands, that's going to be a much bigger task. But it can't be done. But he's going to. These people are so far, like you say, they've abrogated their place at the fucking table. These people are so far gone that we can't help them. The only thing that they can ever really do is also we can't help them against themselves. They have to. The change has to come from within inside themselves first before anything can be done.
I know. I mean, I'm being completely selfish about this. I'm not saying it because I want these people to. I mean, I do want these people to come back from where they are and stop spewing hate. But I mean, at the same time, I think my concern, my far greater concern, is that these people leave behind, like, you don't turn into dangerous extremists.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely. The classic example lately is, obviously Katie Hopkins, and I keep on coming back to it because it's so apparent her fall from grace, her defamation cases, and she's gone over to the Rebel, and everything she says seems to take her further down the path, to the point where she's making comments which would get her arrested in Germany if she was ever to step in there, basically inciting violence against migrants. Writing polemics saying, this is what happens if you attack a nation's, women or something like that. These are people just defending themselves, and that is supremely dangerous, and it's verging on extremism. I mean, it is extreme.
I think it is extreme. I think that's at the very least, you're justifying terrorism.
Mm. Yes, exactly. So
even, I mean, it could be. I think it could be rather successfully argued that she's trying to advocate for it, but at the very, very least, you're justifying it. And like you say, that if she ever went to Germany, it's very possible she could be arrested for that, because it's undoubtedly illegal. I don't think any German legal expert would say otherwise.
Well, yeah, I mean, not that I think that it's right and good that that people are arrested for. Well, in some ways, I am kind of glad that people are arrested for saying these kind of things, because it stops violence from happening in many cases. Yeah. I mean, in Germany, it's worth. I think it's almost worth an episode. I think I should do a podcast about this one day. The laws of freedom, laws regarding speech are pretty damn open, except for a few very, very marked things. Yeah. And one of them is inciting violence.
Yeah, and it's I as much as I've been critical in the past, like for instance the fact that up until very recently, and even with it has to have explanatory notes, Mein Kampf was illegal to publish that in Germany up until very recently. I was critical of that because I think it's silly and unnecessary. But I completely understand why, even though I think it's an overkill measure, why the German state would be very, very hypersensitive about that sort of thing.
Well, I think the thing about the German state, which is difficult from the state, or different from the state that you and I both reside in, is that they usually look before they leap, and they have a law in place until they have a better alternative.
Yeah, that's crazy.
They talked about what they did with Mein Kampf is they didn't just say, okay, let's go. Let's just, everybody can buy Mein Kampf in the shops. They were very clear about it. They said, okay, you can buy Mein Kampf. It has to have a special cover. You can't have the cover that it had when it came out, which is a very iconic cover over there with, Mein Kampf on the diagonal. And I think it's in Fraktur, which is the font. It all looks very impressive. You can't sell it like that. And you can't sell it as, without additions. You have to sell it with the explanatory notes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, it's they thought about it, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll breeze through a couple of things and then we'll end on a funny one. Yeah, because we're at the hour mark already. I thought it was worth just briefly bringing up a couple of juxtapositions to expose the hypocrisy of the far right. Firstly, their exploiting of the murder of Molly Tibbetts by a supposedly illegal immigrant, although that's contested, the illegality or otherwise. And the fact that one murder received, it got the presidential seal of virtue signaling. But the Jacksonville shooting, where 3 people were killed and 12 injured or something? That was a complete black.
4 killed. We're talking about the Madden one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 4 killed, 11, I think, injured.
Yeah, and that the difference between those two, and the fact that it's being exploited in order to attack immigrants, but the fact that it was a white guy that did the Jacksonville shooting, I think is rather telling as to whether they actually care about people who.
We know very little. Relatively, apart from the immigration status, we don't know all that much about Molly Tibbetts' killer.
Yeah,
we don't. Whereas with I can't remember the name of this guy, the Jacksonville shooter, but today I've seen at least 3 different articles talking about, the number of medications that he was on, the psych call-outs to his house, everything, everything that could possibly explain his actions have been listed as.
Well, and that's an interesting point you raised there, because why are those mitigating factors, or essentially excuses, why are they never rolled out for members of like, I don't know, the Bloods and the Crips. When they shoot someone, oh, they're violent people. But yeah, when some fucker does this that's white, oh, he was mentally unstable. He was this, that, and the other. And of course,
absolute silence from Trump about this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, never fucking mentioned it. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas the entire apparatus of Fox News and conservative talking heads have been, going on non-stop about Molly Tibbetts. The interesting thing about Molly Tibbetts is that, rest in peace, she was not a conservative by any stretch of the imagination. Well, and neither were her family. And her family basically came out, I think it was her cousin, basically said, take her name out your mouth. This is not, she does not represent anything of what you guys are.
If I can find the screenshot, I've got it here somewhere, of Milo Yiannopoulos being a fucking piece of garbage.
Okay, we're moving on from that because it's a bit heavy.
Oh no, it's very much Tibbetts related.
Right.
But it's Milo being a garbage about Tibbetts. If I can find the fucking screenshot, where are you, you bastard? Is this here? Yeah, there we go. Hang on one second. Right, I'll just screenshot. Yeah, firstly, he's done the same thing that so many of these fucking pricks have done in trying to use her murder as like an anti-immigration talking point. And he said, firstly, get the fuck off that screen. Right there. No, wrong one. There we go. Heartbreaking. Right. He tweets out his own fucking article about this and says it's heartbreaking that she got murdered. Then he finds out that she was anti-Trump. These things she retweeted here with the star on fire and all the rest of it. And he writes, "Enjoy hell, Molly." Yeah,
they will turn in an instant, and it's interesting seeing a lot of the usual suspects basically just ignoring and leaving beside all of the the sympathy and the Ben Garrison cartoons sort of. About the situation aside, the second it came out that she was a liberal.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean they're fucking garbage, these people. And having mentioned Milo, a group he seems rather fond of, though he shouldn't, paedophile priests. Yes, the Catholic Church once again mired in scandal, as it seems so routine it's sickeningly boring. Pennsylvania this time in America. In just 3 of the counties there, they were found hundreds of priests having raped thousands of children over the course of decades. Where was Tommy? Where was I?
Tommy was he was at the KSI Logan Paul fight.
He was, yeah.
He was hanging out with Love Island stars. He was eating very horrible looking roast dinners, as evidenced by his Instagram.
Yeah, indeed. Which he got back, by the way. So you can stop fucking moaning now, you little prick. Anyways, that he got. By the way, Todd Robinson got his Instagram taken down. They bitched, and he got it back, but didn't say. So anyway, regardless, right? Tommy and his ilk usually absolutely outraged by the fact that when Muslims are accused of this is outrageous. The Muslims like to rape children, and yet I have not heard anything from them on this, on the Catholic Church having been provably by the fucking rule of law to have not just engaged in, but engaged in the suppression of the information and the moving around and therefore facilitation of further child rape. But these are white men, aren't they? Is that the difference, do we think?
Not sure. But one thing I always get when I sort of raise this point, saying, do you care? Do you care enough? Do you also care about the problems of child sexual exploitation in the Catholic Church? And they always say, well, yeah, okay, but we don't have to import it, do we? As if like. Well, I mean, sorry, I just lost for words for a second. As if it's okay to sort of, we've got ours. It's all right.
Yeah, so well, these are good British paedophiles, so it's fine, apparently. Yeah,
I mean, they're not saying it's all right. They're sort of they're good British paedophiles, but it's sort of suggesting that.
Well, I'm not saying it literally, but their actions speak louder than their fucking words.
Yeah.
They don't. They couldn't give a fuck when it's white or Christian child rape. No. So their issue is not child rape. Their issue is brown people. Very.
I mean, obviously, without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And whilst we're on the topic of or what we mentioned, Tommy, his retrial, which I dare say, if which was originally planned for the 4th of September, has now been pushed back to the 28th. Which the gammon were all a fluster about, because apparently that was done in order to try and disrupt their plans to protest outside. Yeah, as if the High Court give a fuck about some gammon pricks on the internet. No, it was a procedural matter. They were booked on the day, so they pushed it back a couple of weeks.
And seriously, giving your counsel another month to prepare, is not going to disadvantage you in any way whatsoever.
And it's another month of freedom guaranteed, because. Or another 3 weeks or whatever. Yeah, because if he does get
the only people that could possibly not be benefiting from this are those people who rely on Tommy's state of being to raise money, such as the Rebel, and such as who else? Anybody who's grifting off him.
Yeah, Caleb Robertson. Various other people, yeah, absolutely. But we'll get if that goes the way I'm hoping it will, there'll probably be some gammon-based riots.
No, he's going to jail.
Yeah, it seems very likely, considering that his own fucking lawyer at the appeal admitted to his guilt. So, I mean, automatically that triggers the 3 months, but that technically would already have been served. So for the second offence, presumably you'd have to get at least that 3 months again, you would think, which means he goes back to jail for probably another couple of months.
Yes.
So that he's probably almost certainly
longer than he was in previously for this last little bit. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be. I'd be very surprised if he got exactly the same sentence. There'd probably be a reduction of some variety, but he's probably going back to jail, and there'll probably be the same usual fucking crowd of idiots who will riot. But that will give us an opportunity to do a Tommy Robinson special and rip on him and his stupid fans.
Well, one thing, just one thing before we leave Tommy, I will be very interested to hear whether the Crown Prosecution Service will be opting to chase up or follow the leads that have been provided to them regarding a couple of other cases that he's turned up at in order to do his piece. So
indeed. Yes,
watch that space.
Yes,
and also his little compadres George and Callan. There is also some evidence that they might have been doing the same.
Yes, it will be very interesting to see how that goes down. And like you say, watch this space. But just one final thing on Tommy before we move on to our last funny little story, was, of course, him admitting that he's a lying piece of shit, because he claimed that he was being tortured in prison by not having access to a television. Firstly, that's not torture, you fucking absolute
blessed relief.
Yes. But like you say, he was hanging out with a Love Island star, Love Island being a television program here in Britain, and on his Instagram page said that one of the things that had gotten him through his stretch in prison was watching Love Island on TV. Yeah. So either he lied about not having a TV or he lied about watching Love Island. Either way, you're a fucking liar, Tommy.
I'm willing to venture that he did have a television.
Almost certainly, yes.
He's just a lying prick.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, regardless, he's a liar. Both of those things can't be true. So either way, he's a liar. And yeah, it's almost certain that he did have a TV, because I think we would have heard during his stretch.
I think
he might have mentioned that in the letters out that he didn't have the TV. So yeah, he's talking shit.
I think the only thing that he was really suffering from in prison was lack of access to the nose candy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, indeed. Although interestingly, he's one of the few people I've ever seen give up cocaine and actually lose weight. So well done to him on that. Anyway, we didn't mention Boris Johnson on the burqa as well. We might get back to it at a different time. It seems he might have learned his lesson, but he seems to be edging towards the Bannon playbook, which is very worrying, as he may become prime minister at some point. Unlikely, but possible. So yeah,
increasingly unlikely.
Yeah, yeah, unlikely, but not. I mean, not as unlikely as I'd ever be comfortable with. That's
exactly. Yeah, true.
Yeah, so he was being a racist prick towards a very small minority here in Britain because he's a fucking coward and a bully. Anyway, moving on to our final story, which is a funny one and a stupid one. Because I thought after some of the serious stuff, we could look at this piece of utter fucking nonsense. Are you aware? It was announced today, in fact, that there's going to be a follow-up to the Trump baby blimp by the far right, who have put together.
Yes, I was. Yes, indeed.
This fucking monstrosity here. Can we see this on the screen? That is supposedly a representation of the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, which they're going to fly above Parliament Square in London. And I just want to take you through a few things. Firstly, it doesn't actually really look anything like him. Secondly, he's in a bikini, as you can see there. The reason they've done this, right? Hang on. The balloon version of Mr. Khan. This is a thing from the London Standard. The balloon version of Khan will be wearing a bikini in response to the banning of a series of Protein World adverts. You may remember the Beachbody Ready advert. Showed a woman in a yellow bikini with the slogan "Are you Beachbody Ready?" from public transport in 2016. Now, firstly, that's a piece of really shit journalism because it was 2015. And Sadiq Khan wasn't fucking Mayor of London at the time.
No,
that was Boris Johnson, dozy bastards. So it's got literally nothing to do with him. But they put him in a yellow bikini anyway because why not? And it's a completely unoriginal idea, of course. They're just ripping off the Trump baby blimp because they've got no idea of their own. And why is basically 58 grand, right? That's been raised, and the person who's doing this, the guy Yanni Breuer, described himself as a Brit but lives in Spain. And he described himself as a free speech advocate, but yet he is doing this to protest the fact that that Sadiq Khan didn't ban the Trump baby blimp. I don't think he understands freedom of speech, does he?
I from what I've read of the situation, I'm willing to believe, I'm starting to believe, or I'm likely to believe, that young Yanni is not the sharpest tool in the shed, and is in fact someone who is being used by other people.
Very possibly. Very possibly so. But like I say, free speech advocate describes himself as, but yet wants the government to have banned an entirely peaceful, inoffensive piece of protest by doing that very same piece of protest that he originally wanted banned, but just aimed at a different person. Ridiculous. And of course, the organisation he's supposedly fronting this group, Make London Safe Again. Please do tell me, Mr. Briere, when the fuck was London ever safe? Ever?
It's all the grift. It's all the grift.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous. London, I mean, yes, there has been a spike in crime in recent times. That's a fucking shame and things need to be done about it. But London has been much more dangerous in the past. Much more dangerous.
Consistently, it's been getting consistently safer in terms of the rates of violent incidents since the 90s. Yes, there has been upticks in knife crime, but that is completely predictable. Based on legislative decisions made by the Met, by the government, and enforced by the Met.
Yeah, so not by the Mayor of London, be it Boris Johnson, Ken Livingstone, or fucking Sadiq Khan. Yeah, absolutely nonsense. Yeah,
it's because he's brown.
It's because he's brown. It's because he's a Muslim. Yeah. That's the be all and end all of all of this. That's the reason they hate him. They don't give a fuck. They don't actually seem to know what his job is because they keep blaming him for things that aren't under his jurisdiction. It's like national government or the Metropolitan Police or whatever. Which
it's just the 2 minutes hate.
Yeah, of course it fucking is. Of course it is. And to those mentioning the acid attacks in London, that's not a Muslim thing. It's actually not a religious thing. They're largely robberies. It's horrific. I'm not for a second downplaying how absolutely disgusting it is. And people that do it need to go to jail for a very long time. My point is, it's done by people of all different shades of skin, backgrounds, ethnicities, religions. It's a robbery thing, not a religion thing. So stop going, oh, the Muslims are doing that.
Same with acid.
Yeah. It's nonsense.
I mean, I think I've been tempted to do a podcast on acid myself, but BBC did a much better thing that I could ever do.
I was directly referring. I was saying that the acid attacks. That's what I was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's utter nonsense. Yeah. So they're blaming him for the Beachbody Ready adverts, for which he wasn't the mayor of London, so couldn't have had any real impact on. They're attacking him for allowing a peaceful protest to take place in London, even though he probably had the right to deny them because it's in the restricted zone, but outside Parliament, which is fucking disgusting in of itself if that even exists. But whatever. But they're doing it by doing the very same thing. So I mean, it's hypocrisy layered upon hypocrisy layered upon stupidity and pissing 58 grand down a fucking toilet.
Such is the world that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. But I just thought it was funny. And I'd like to end with the Sadiq Khan quote, which shows what an evil fucking ISIS member he must be. Because, I mean, for a start, he fucking allowed this to take place, even though, like I say, it's in the restricted zone. He could have told them to fuck off. He said, if people want to spend their Saturdays looking at me in a bikini, they are perfectly entitled to. I just don't think yellow is my colour, really. What a terrible! It's almost those words could have come from Osama bin Laden himself. It's ridiculous. It's so absurd that they claim that he's this extremist when, I mean, he's just a middle of the road politician dick. That's all he is. He's a twat in a fucking suit.
He's a prick just like the rest of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anyways, I thought it was a funny one to end on because the far right is so unoriginal and so stupid and wasting their time and money. But they're perfectly entitled to do so because whatever they tell you, we live in a free society. So there you go. Because it's just like the Jews didn't take over when the Nazis had said they had, the Muslims have not taken over now.
Indeed.
Oh. And on that bombshell, do we have any final closing thoughts, Michael?
Well, I've been reading a little bit of philosophy lately, and just in looking at the state of play and the way things are. You know, I come back to Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan a lot, and you'll all know that. Well, many of you will know that Thomas Hobbes was talking about the nature of society, and that all is chaos, and that without sort of mitigating influences and strong leaders, that we all will end up being eating each other alive. But he's the pull quote, the quote for the back of the book is for Leviathan is that, life is nasty, brutish, and short. And I think that needs a bit of an update. I mean, looking at the far right and the stuff that we have to deal with, can I just add stupid to that?
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that life is nasty, brutish, short, and stupid, or at least the subject of our monthly podcast is. So that's my final thought.
Absolutely, I think that's a perfectly reasonable and adequate way, and a delightful piece of highbrow analysis as well to end on.
Well, I'm trying to bring a bit more effort to this after the first one. I really enjoy doing this. So let's see if I can bring some more quality content each time.
Yeah, exactly. Because I certainly won't. I will be doing dick jokes and laughing at Alex Jones wanking over transport. That to me will never not be funny. And actually, I completely apropos of nothing. I was watching Ted Cruz trying to play basketball earlier, and I nearly fucking wet myself. It was so fun. I think he once got within about a foot of making a shot. It's brilliant. Anyways,
oh dear.
And on that hoops bombshell, yeah, thank you, Mike, for joining us this time. We might even be back before the end of next month, should the Tommy thing kick off.
Let's hope so.
Around the same time, we would be doing our September episode anyway, so maybe we'll fit it all in. Who knows? But until next time, thank you, and thank you to the chat, and thank you to everyone for putting up the nonsense of having to do it on the second fucking channel because of the flag on the first. Hopefully that gets sorted by next month. Thank you all for listening and watching. Goodbye.